Hello dear chess lovers, it's white to play in this position. Please tell me, what should white play? In this video folks, I'm gonna show you why context is everything in chess and how you should not blindly apply chess principles in any position. Calculation and blunder check are the key for today's video folks. You should always justify your principled moves with concrete calculation, and you should be suspicious about your good ideas by proper blunder check. Now let's apply this chess principle to this position. What did we learn as chess players? We learned that we should generally, with an extra pawn, we should generally seek for simplifications, go for a pure king and pawn endgame, and win with a clear extra pawn. Correct? You must have heard that chess principle. You must have even applied that chess principle to your games at some point. Now, what is that move that connects to this chess principle? Yes, folks, congratulations if you came up with the idea of knight b6 check, because you're forcing the trade of these knights and you're entering pure king and pawn endgame with a clear extra pawn, right? White is 6 pawns versus 5, and white is winning this position. Although king and pawn endgames being so concrete, you should also analyze and calculate some lines just to be sure, right? Because this king is momentarily more active than your king, and things can also go in different and ugly directions for white. Now, it's clear in this position, if he goes king e4, you take both of these pawns and you run the a pawn. So the major line to calculate is c4. After takes, f3 also wins for white, but I very much like king c6, sort of shouldering away the black king. And if they go for this pawn instead, you do this, and they have no time for that, right? You just capture. And after king c6, well, if he does go in this direction, I believe king c5 is good enough, right? We take and we run the a pawn in this position. And otherwise, if black does something else in this position, I'm not sure what, let's say king c5, h5, right? You can also play for f3 and slowly run your extra pawn to divert the black king, and your pawn is quicker than the pawn, right? Again, you see, it requires some concrete calculation, but also it becomes evident that you will win this position as your king is improved and your a pawn is running. So, taking a step back, what we learned from this example is that we were letting those chess principles guide our decision of entering a pure pawn endgame with an extra pawn. Having said that, we know pawn endgames are so concrete, we also calculated few lines to make sure that this was winning for white. Okay? Now, I will show you a different position. Folks, it's white to play in this position. Please take a moment, stop the video. It's almost the same position with a minor difference. First of all, start from there. What is the difference between two positions? Can you spot it? I'm now testing your attention, guys. There's a huge difference with this minor change. Well, let me tell you that difference, folks. In this position, the white pawn is on b2 instead of on b3. Is that relevant? And that's my question to you, folks. What difference does it make for the pawn to remain on b2 instead of on b3? And you tell me. That's exactly why context is everything in chess, and a single difference can mean huge things that can change the outcome of the game. Now, my question is the same. It's white to play. Should we go for simplification? And you tell me. Can you please engage in a proper blunder check and answer whether knight b6 is a good move or not for white? Folks, knight b6 is a terrible blunder, because after takes, you tell me what black will play in this position. And yes, you're a great player if you observed that in this very pawn structure, black can go c4 and no one can stop them from generating an unstoppable pass pawn after c3, right? And that's the difference. If your pawn was still on b3 in this position, you would stop c4, creation of a pass pawn. But here, in this pawn formation, black is going c4 and no one can stop c3. So what is the lesson here? Pawn structure is not symmetrical. This should give you a signal, like a warning sign, right? Because despite the fact that it's 2 versus 2 on the queen side, let's say, in this pawn structure, black can create a pass pawn. And pass pawn creation is a huge thing in a pawn endgame, right? In endgames in general. So you have to be very attuned to the creation of a pass pawn, especially in a pure pawn endgame, folks, right? Because your king is far away, and this was the warning sign for white in this very position, right? Because here you must see that. In this very position, you have to see and visualize this position that black is creating an unstoppable pass pawn and winning the game. So what is that warning signal for us? Yes, the signal is the asymmetrical pawn formation on the queen side, and you knowing those basic endgame patterns of how they can create a pass pawn, right? After king b5, c3, right? It doesn't matter, you can take that pawn, they still make a queen. They're much faster, you see? It's not so much about the king's activity. That's a strange part, right? It's not so much about black king being so much more active than your king. It's purely about the pawn structure. The black king could also be on g8 in this position. And after c4, no one is stopping black from rolling that pawn with c3, right? Incredible. So what did we learn from these two examples? You please summarize your basic lessons from these two positions, folks. To me, what these examples show us is chess principles cannot be blindly applied to any position, because white was relying on chess principles here. He told himself, hey, I have an extra pawn, so let's simplify and win this pawn endgame, right? He hand-waved. He was using general principles instead of concrete calculation. So chess being such a concrete game, calculation and blunder check are much more important than those general principles. Of course, general principles are also important in guiding our calculation, right? So this idea is a very logical looking idea because of chess principles. We simplify and win a pure pawn endgame with an extra pawn. But you cannot just play the move at that moment. Then comes the scientific process. Yes, this looks like a beautiful idea, but I will seek for counter evidence from the world, and that's a counter evidence for you before playing my move. That's exactly how science works. Scientists come up with some plausible ideas, hypotheses, right? Just like here, that's a beautiful hypothesis to win for the game for white. But before they accept their hypothesis, they are seeking for counter evidence from the world, right? That's why chess is a beautiful scientific game. It can teach us so many good things about science, objectivity, right? Hypothesis testing, and all these things. That's why I love this game, folks. It's an incredibly beautiful game. Anyways, that's a sidetracking. But what did we learn from this example? Two examples. Concrete calculation, and finally, the blunder-check process. I'm now working on a course on the blunder-check, folks. It will be full of such puzzles. I'll be constantly tricking you with those examples. Should white go knight b6? Is it good or white? Sometimes it will be a good move. As in the first example, right? We can go back to the first position. In this position, that's a great move. White is winning. Why? Because there is no c4 and c3 creation of a pass pawn in this very position, right? A minor difference can change everything in chess. In the other position, if you go knight b6, what's happening is you're letting the creation of an unstoppable pass pawn, and that's a huge category of blunder-check process. You have to ask yourself some questions, and one of those checklist questions are, as a result of my move, am I allowing an unstoppable passed pawn, right? You can also write down those checklist questions somewhere, and while you're playing slow games, you can use those questions to double check your calculations. Especially in endgames, this question becomes so much more relevant. As a result of my next move, am I allowing an unstoppable passed pawn, right? This question could have prevented white in engaging and going for this line of knight b6. I hope you liked this episode. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Please give me feedback on YouTube. Please write to me on YouTube your expectations. It's also good for algorithm, folks. Despite the fact that I'm getting amazing feedback from you, we don't reach new people. So we have to find a way to make those videos accessible or reachable to general chess population. So I also need your help here. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share those videos with your chess friends. That's very important for me to be able to produce such instructive content for you. So I'm here to support you in this journey, but I also need your help to make my videos more reachable to the general public. And finally, I will leave you again with these two positions with a minor difference. This was the first one, this was the second one. This was the first one, this was the second one, right? See what a difference it makes. A minor difference can change everything, especially when you're transitioning to a pure pawn endgame, folks. It's about chess patterns as well, but it's about this scientific mindset of double checking your vision and calculations, and even your intuition can misguide you sometimes. That's why chess is so difficult and yet so beautiful, yet so complex and so scientific. That's why we love the game. Anyways, that's a sidetracking, and I hope you love the episode, folks. I will catch you again as soon as possible in a different instructive video. Bye bye.